So this was around late 2010, early 2011. I was 15 at the time, and I was spending the weekend at my best friend's house. Her name is Talia, and my two other friends, Jade and Shauna, were there too. Our friend Jack lived across town, and he wanted us to come over to hang out. It was about a 10 to 12 minute walk to get there, but it was 9 p.m. and a Saturday night, and Talia was skeptical about walking across town in the first place. So she stayed behind us, but the rest of us figured since there was three of us walking there, we could be safe. So we get to Jack's house, and he had been drinking out of his mother's liquor cabinet. He was 17 at the time, and two acquaintances of ours, who were dating each other and having problems with their relationship, were there too. It was annoying for me to be there, since none of us wanted a drink, and one of the acquaintances was drunkenly spilling her life story to me and how she wanted to break up with her boyfriend because she was in love with her ex, yada yada yada. Basically shit that I didn't care about. I barely knew this girl, but I listened and tried to help her through her drunken banter while we were there. So 11:30 p.m. hits, and Jade and Shauna decide to call Talia's mom, who treated us as if we were her own children, to come and pick us up because, of course, no one wanted to walk back at almost midnight, even with there being three of us. The drunk girl didn't want me to leave, so I felt bad and stayed behind and told Jade and Shauna that I'll just walk back later. I didn't have a concept of fear. I was, according to rumors at my school, one of the most intimidating girls in our class. I always carried a pocket knife on me and was going through a goth stage. I knew the town like the back of my hand, so I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I finally leave there, and this is where it gets creepy. So I'm walking back across town to Talia's house by myself, texting Jade the whole time to make sure she was still awake so she could open the door for me. It was 12:30 a.m. and I was walking fairly fast, almost jogging, because I had a bad feeling about being out by myself, so I kept up the pace. I make it to Main Street in the town, and Talia's house was 2 or 3 blocks away from it, a straight shot actually. I looked both ways before I crossed Main Street, and there was one car coming from my right in the distance, driving about 45 miles an hour. So I bolted across the street before the car came up, and as soon as I did that, the car comes to a screeching halt and whips itself onto the road that I was walking on. Luckily, I heard the screeching tires and my instincts kicked in, so I darted into the bushes in front of someone's house, because my brain quickly comprehended that something didn't seem right about a car driving so fast down the road, and especially at this time of night, and then making this quick turn out of nowhere. I stayed crouched in the middle of the bushes. They were thick bushes, and like I said, I was going through my gothic phase, so I was wearing all black and had the night to my advantage. I watched this car slowly creep down the road next to the house I was hiding outside of, almost like people in the car were looking for me. I held my breath. I watched it continue down the road and turn around in a parking lot, and then I watched it head back up to Main Street. As soon as that car got to the stop sign opposite from where I was heading, I bolted. I never ran so fast in my life, all the way from texting Jade with my difficult flip phone, telling her to open the door now. Everything was on cue. I made it to the front steps of Talia's house, and as soon as I got to the first step, Jade opens the door, and that same car comes flying down the road that I was on, hitting the gas and revving the engine, passing the house, almost as if the person or people in the car were mad. Jade sees me out of breath, barging into the house, asking me all of these questions, and as soon as she locks the door, I told her everything. The next morning, I told Talia, Shauna, and Talia's mom about what had happened, and Talia's mom went white. Apparently, a man had been caught a few towns away from ours for stalking and assaulting another woman. It was about the same time, too, late hours of the night. She pulled the news report up on her phone, and we read it, and that same car was in the news report. I'm 21 now, and I own a gun, and I was thinking about this, and it still gives me shivers to this day. I can only imagine what could have happened if I didn't go with my gut that night. I was 15 and had a boyfriend who lived 8 miles from my house. We used to sneak out and visit each other at night, but didn't have cars, so we would walk. He'd walk to my house, or I'd walk to his. One of these nights, I had visited his place and was getting out late, around 2 or 3. I started down the main road, as usual, and heard a car slow down behind me. I looked to my left and saw an older car pull up next to me. The guy looked young, but a little older than me, but still in his 20s. He asked me if I wanted a ride, and I said, "No thanks, I'm good." He asked me again, and I thought about how I had just started my walk and how much further I had to go. I thought, fuck it. I jumped in the car, happy to skip the trek. The first thing I noticed while inside was a strong scent of alcohol in the air. It was so strong. He was also staring at me so hard that he swerved and hit a ditch in the side of the road. "Watch it," I yelled. I was a smart-ass teenager then. He just gave me a goofy drunken smile. He was driving really slow, and I'm not sure why, but out of all the red flags that had presented themselves, it was super slow driving that bothered me the most. I'm just gonna stop here and remind you guys that I was a really naive 15-year-old. Up until this point, I was just annoyed with this dude, but nothing more. I told him to go straight on this road for a few miles when he slowly turned right into a small street. Immediately, I said, "Dude, what are you doing? I said I live that way." "We're going to my friend's house." I said, "I don't think so. Take me home right now." He just ignored me and kept staring at me while driving super slow. I demanded he stop the car, and he ignored me again. I was pissed off now. I opened my door and jumped out of the moving car. I fell hard and got up and started walking away angrily. He was already out of his car and crossed my path. He clutched my arm so hard and pulled me into his car. He sat in the driver's seat and told me to crawl over him into the passenger. I pulled and yanked, but he was so strong. This is finally when I started getting scared in this situation. He wasn't letting me go and basically trying to kidnap me. A horrible feeling of dread just washed over me. I was looking at the moon. It looked so big and beautiful. So many nights I had marveled in this beauty, and it felt like now I was just bearing witness to my demise. I burst out crying. When he did, he loosened his grip on me, and I saw it as a chance to take off running. I lived in a small town, so we had fields of orchards and crops between residential areas. I broke free from him and ran straight into a cornfield that was right off the road. He yelled at me to stop and started chasing me. The stalks were taller than me, so I ran in zigzags through them. I lost a boot in that dirt. He was falling farther behind me. After the field ended, there was an abandoned house that sat right next to the road, so I banged on the door, hoping that maybe I had only thought it was abandoned. There was no answer. Surrounding the house were flat fields and just the main road. I couldn't take any chances running through those, because the moon was so bright that night. I was sure he would have seen me climb into the huge tree. He came out of the cornfields, and I could see him below, looking all around for me. I was so terrified, I could only cry as silently as I could, praying he wouldn't look up. After a while, he gave up and walked back to his car. I thought that was the end of it, but he got in his car and drove up and down the main road looking for me. I was up in the tree so long, I was getting physically tired. I couldn't believe how hard he was looking for me. Sometimes he would get out of his car and look deeper into the areas off the road. Then he'd jump back into his car and go up and down them, really fast and then really slow. After a few hours, he finally disappeared. 30 minutes passed without me seeing his car, and I decided to head home. Again, because the moon was bright and the fields ahead were low, I literally low crawled through them, scared shitless that he might show up, see me off the main road, and chase me again. When I got home, it was dawn, and I was shoeless and covered in dirt, gratefully to be home. Still, needless to say, I never walked the street alone again at night. I live in a farming area, and there's a lot of fields and woodland, so it's not hard to find a place somewhere where I can walk my dogs under leashes. About 2 years ago, one evening, I had completely forgotten to walk them, and it was about 8:30 at night, and it was October, so it was already dark. But I wasn't too bothered, because I knew the whole area very well. I took my large female boxer and my small Chihuahua mix out. I'm a 5'5" girl with quite a bit of muscle on me, as I did a lot of physical sports including martial arts, so I could easily protect myself in a fight. Because of this, I thought I'd be safe. I began walking out of my estate and up a hill with my earphones, playing some heavy metal music to get me in the zone for a quick walk back to the fields and then back home. When I reached the top of the hill, which led to another housing estate bordering the fields, I noticed there was no traffic at all, no movement. At this point, it was almost 9, and there was nobody to be seen, which I thought was unusual because it's a very well-populated area. Besides this, I carried on walking, with a little crossbreed biting at the lead with excitement and my boxer trying to attack my shadow. Once we reached the fields, it was almost pitch black there, and there were no lamps. The only light was from the houses that faced the field. I took my boxer off her leash, and as boxers do, she bounced off into the tall grass like a child, and my little mutt stayed nipping at my heels. After 5 or so minutes, my eyes had adjusted to the lighting of the field, and I could see my boxer had stopped a meter ahead of me, staring at something. Instantly, my Jack Russell mix starts growling and stands up between my legs. I look up to see a figure standing about 3 meters away from me. I shout for my boxer to come back to me. As usual, she gets friendly with strangers and jumps on them. Reluctantly, she turns to me and begins running at me. My eyes never leaving the figure, I call out and apologize for my dogs. I think I said something like, "Sorry, she's only a puppy. She thinks everybody wants to play." But no response. Just silence from this figure. I could see that they had long hair and what looked like a long raincoat on. The shoulders were wide, however, I still think it was a woman. Once again, I called out to her, "Are you okay? Did she jump on you?" Again, nothing. At this point, I could feel her eyes on me and my dogs. My littlest dog began barking and squealing, and my boxer began barking this horrifying bark that I've never heard before. It sounded like she was trying to threaten the figure. Then, I heard the woman begin laughing. That's when I lost it. I picked up my little dog and ran, knowing full well my boxer would follow me. Like I said earlier, I do a lot of sports, so I'm fast and don't have too bad a stamina. Jumping over the gate with my dog in my arms and my boxer right behind me, I glance over my shoulder and see the woman clear as day in full pursuit. I couldn't give exact details. All I can tell you is that she looked like something straight out of a horror movie. She was grotesque in every sense of the word. At this point, my boxer was running just a little ahead of me. She knew I was running home and that this woman was bad news. She could have bolted, but for whatever reason, she kept at the speed that matched mine. Maybe it's the dog's loyal instinct of the pack or something, I'm not really sure. Anyways, by the time I reached the end of the first estate, I slowed down to look behind me. That was a big mistake. There she was, still running, quite a distance behind me, but she was coming. At this point, my head was completely mush, but I knew if I went down the route that I came up from the field that she would catch me. So I darted to the left, at the end of the estate, and ran across down the road. My boxer is right beside me at this point, and my mutt had gone silent and was digging his paws into my arms and chest. I ran like I never ran before. At the end of the street, I turned right, which brought me onto a street next to the opening of my estate. I didn't look behind me until I reached my driveway. I put my mutt down, and he ran with my boxer to the front door of my house. I looked behind me. She wasn't there, but I could hear her laughing. So I ran to the door, opened it, and slammed it behind me, and then bolted it shut. I turned the porch light off, and peering out the little window of the door, she walked straight past the end of my driveway. She hadn't seen me. I told my older sister what had happened, and she told me that it was best if we didn't tell our dad, as he probably wouldn't let me walk them alone again. Ever since that night, I rarely forget to walk my dogs before it gets dark out, and when I do, I walk them first thing the next morning.